today I have a great guest, Justin Stinson.
I've been in the telecom space, telecommunications for just about 20 years.
How you end up doing what you do?
Here in Iowa, a lot of stuff is rural. You can build fiber down a mile road and pick up one customer, and it's not uncommon.
Liberty Communications. I saw it on your profile.
A commercial business out in the middle of nowhere, and you don't have good internet. How are you going to really run your business? You can't do your books necessarily.
With your permission, I would take the position of a professional coach. Well, maybe amateur coach. And my only client is Justin Stinson. Hello and welcome to Big Performance Podcast. I am Alex Ellis, your host, and today I have a great guest, Justin Stinson. And thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me today. Today is 4th of July, by the way. So Justin joined me on a public holiday. So thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Justin, can you tell a little bit about yourself and how you end up doing what you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been in the telecom space, telecommunications for just about 20 years and with a few different companies, from large companies to very small ones, and kind of raised through the ranks of leadership within the telecommunications world. And it's a fascinating industry and I really love it. It's always changing. But in 2020, the pandemic hit and we started to see everybody struggling to do business the same way. Face to face went out the door. You couldn't shake hands anymore. The way everybody sold and marketed completely had to change. And so I saw a lot of people really struggling with that. And so, I just kind of started to offer my way of thinking. I actually studied photography in college, and so I've always used that kind of mentality to approach business from a very different perspective. I have a very creative mindset, and I really like to solve problems from a different angle than what most people do. And so I thought, well, maybe I can use this creativity to help other people with their businesses or their careers or anything like that moving forward. And so I just kind of started to offer my services, and then it really started to take off. I realized a lot of people really need a lot of help, and so it just kind of morphed into this opportunity to help entrepreneurs, to help leaderships and focus on leadership development and growth and scaling a business as well as culture. And then also working with those startups on sales processes, working with founders and CEOs on their leadership development so that they could continue to grow their business. And so now I work globally with companies and individuals, and it's just been so rewarding because it not only makes me a better leader, but it really helps me continue that creative thought process and get different perspectives from outside of the normal companies I deal with. Somebody working in Germany sometimes can have similar problems to somebody working in Australia, and how do we combine those two thought processes even though they're on the opposite sides of the world? And so it's really fascinating to kind of see those combinations happen.
It would be fascinating to look at the cultural differences that companies have in the different places of the world, given that they are in the same niche. So
Right.
they should be having the same issues, but they first might approach those issues differently based on their cultural mentality and the business surrounding that they have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Those people that are in your network can really have a huge impact and influence on how you're approaching your business or how you're approaching your problem solving. Here in the US, for instance, we've got a bunch of different influences, whether it is, other commerce or political impacts or, you know, just parts of the country are very, very different. And then you compare that to Europe or Africa or even just parts of the different country. East Coast in the US is not necessarily like the South the South of the U.S. They're very different cultural impacts, and so it's really interesting to see how those then play out into business and how people, treat their employees different, build cultures around that, and just problem solve around it. So it's really fascinating. It's one of the most uh, surprising pieces that I think I got when I started. That is just the the cultural impact. But then if you can use those cultural impacts to build both companies, you're really opening up that broad thinking, and trying to get people to think differently by looking at other people's worlds.
Tell me about Liberty Communications. I saw it on your profile. Or what it is that you do with that company?
Yeah, they're a small telecom company. They've been around for almost 130 years, and started out as just a traditional phone company, and over the years just began to expand out into broadband internet, fiber, even some fixed wireless. Um, and so when I joined them, we had a plan for growth, and the idea was we wanted to grow aggressively throughout the region. And so we took that knowledge, and we built out some additional fiber and fixed wireless network. We launched a commercial sales side of the business, and we did some acquisition of another broadband company to help expand our footprint. And super successful, nearly double the size of the company in a short period of time. And it's really been an interesting path forward with a small company that really has never experienced growth before, and what that means, and there's growing pains anytime you grow a company, and just the change of mindset to think differently.
For me, it was already very different to even have a look at a small telecom company because I seen none. I saw only the huge telecom companies. And when visiting the website of Liberty Communications, I'm like, well, that's very different to
Yeah.
what I would expect. So there is this idea that this company is local. It
Hmm.
showcases local communities, connections to particular local businesses saying, hey,
Yep.
this guy that you get your uh, meat shop supplies is using our internet. I'm like, wow.
Right.
So it's
Right.
really local. There is also something about this company being uh, providing internet to rural areas. And
Hmm.
I have no idea about this thing. Absolutely, because I don't know
Yeah.
what part of country it is, and I've never been to US.
Right. Right.
So as a C-level executive for a company that provides telecom to rural areas, what it is that you do.
Yeah. Rural. Here in Iowa, a lot of stuff is rural, and oops, cat joining me. So a lot of the state is rural, and so you can build fiber down a mile road and pick up one customer, and it's not uncommon. There's not a lot of density other than a few of the larger communities, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, things like that. But you're not going to find big city type stuff. So if you go to Chicago, New York, some of those really large cities, you've got that urban feel, and you've got just a ton of density. I mean, you can have one skyrise that has 1,000 people um, in operating in it, either living or working in it. And we don't have that out in rural Iowa. We've got a lot of farms, we've got a lot of um, topography that makes it really tough to get there, and it creates this unique challenge, because when you're looking at an ROI in building fiber to some place, it's really difficult sometimes to make that business case and identify how you're going to actually make money by building this much fiber. Now, there has been a lot of government grants and funding and stuff coming out that does help reach a lot of those rural things, and some new technologies, upgrades to like fixed wireless, for instance, is helping solve some of those problems to get to some of the most difficult locations to reach. But, somebody living out, in the middle of the country running a really successful farm should not suffer and not have the same access to the technical world like anybody living in the big city. And so I think that's really where everybody's trying to get to, is to provide that high speed connectivity anywhere in the country so that you can achieve the same thing. If, a farmer's daughter wants to become an astronaut, the internet shouldn't be the thing that's preventing them from doing that. So it is really important getting out there and understanding how to make that ROI work in order to get the most opportunity that's sitting out there.
Yeah, that was something that I was worried for a second. Thanks for letting me know, because I saw that if this is very distributed region,
Mm-hmm.
like would the cost of providing the fiber to each of the place fall onto the owners of the place? And
Right.
that is not looking right when we understand how in today's year we think about the internet. We think
Right.
about it almost as a human right.
Yep.
I
Yep.
need access to all the things on the internet. And
Exactly.
if you tell me that getting internet to my location is a construction project that I need to fund,
Yep.
that would be an issue. I would be super mad about it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I
And
will
some
I will find the money, by the way,
right. Yeah,
because
because
I
it's
need
it's
that.
such a critical piece to the world today. I mean, almost everything we do runs somehow through the internet, and so having that connectivity is so critical. And there are some, like, some commercial businesses, for instance, that are willing to put up some extra money to get fiber out there quicker and help offset that ROI. So maybe we call it an aid to construction. And so they'll put money into that construction project in order to help it move faster. And that does help both expand the network and get people that connection that they really need. Because if think about, if you're a commercial business out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have good internet, how are you going to really run your business? You can't do your books necessarily. You can't pay your employees as easily. You can't, run your website the same way. It takes away all of your e-commerce opportunities. And so that connectivity for any kind of business is just critical. And so getting a reliable, fast connection out there is everything.
I see. So you didn't have any troubles running the business throughout COVID, because nobody would say that you are not essential.
Yeah, and I was at a previous telecom company during COVID and heading into COVID. But yeah, we had special little letters that we had to carry around saying that we were essential employees, and my my staff really had to take extra precautions in making sure that we were protected in every possible way, and making sure the customers were protected in order to keep them up, keep the network up. And it was also interesting to watch. You saw everybody kind of go home and start to use the internet from home, and that really shifts the traffic on a network. And so I know a lot of companies in the industry were really worried about that real big increase in traffic during the middle of the day. So businesses typically will run it in the middle of the day, and afternoon, evenings, you see a residential play. So you'll see that spike on the residential side. Well, now we are spiking everything through the entire middle of the day, and it never really stopped. It would go through, everybody's working from home on the residential networks, and then it would carry over into residential usage with like streaming. A lot more people were streaming video while they're at home, quarantined at home. they were doing business there. Everything went to Zoom calls where, they used to have face-to-face meetings. And so that usage just went through the roof. But, our network at the time, and I think most of the other ones that I've talked to really were able to handle that increased traffic and that change in traffic.
How come the technology was prepared when nothing else was? The government was not prepared, people
Right.
were not prepared, but technology could handle it easily.
Yeah, I think if you're a company that really handled it well, then you tend to be a growth minded company. So essentially you had built that network to support a lot of new customers. And so
Mm,
even though maybe you're not necessarily getting those new customers at the time, you're getting their traffic. And so it was able to handle what was built as a growth network. And I think that was the biggest thing. So the ones that handled it the best are probably the ones that have been growth minded for some period of time or really moving into a growth minded mentality.
I see. Cool. So telecom companies are built with this growth mind at place,
Hmm.
and the growth of the company means the growth of the revenue. So
Yep.
we do want to prepare for that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And, that was an interesting thing is, people are using the internet more, but telecom companies aren't necessarily getting more revenue from it at that time. Um, I think what ultimately kind of carried over is that when we did start to come out of the pandemic, those people that really had um, a great experience with their provider were able to talk highly of it, and you sort of got some of that grassroots referral type of business going to other people that maybe didn't have as great of experience. So I think that's where the telecom companies started to grow coming out of the pandemic, is just that word of mouth advertising that really helped drive their business.
All right. I have two exercises for you. The first
Okay.
is I want you to imagine that there is a blank slate person. This person is as smart as you, as handsome as you, and their only desire in this world to be performing as Justin Stinson. How do you teach this person to be you?
Um, wow, that's a great question. Um, so
Let's
I would say
let's
there's.
let's think about a particular one day, because we cannot teach in a short span of time how to be
Yep.
you in every situation and every kind of moment. But this perfect actor says like, all right, let's rehearse and perform one day. So let's, yeah, and it's manageable. We can
Perfect.
make a list. Wake up, super refreshed, jumping out
Yep.
of bed in this like energetic style. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Um, so on a typical day, I am, out of bed by 5:30 in the morning. During the week, I generally make a trip to the gym and I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours doing some sort of gym work. It's not too crazy. I'll do some cardio and some light lifting and stuff, but basically just to get that blood pumping. When I'm done, I'll get back to home and I will basically make breakfast, um, and then I jump on my laptop and I start looking at emails and responding to a number of different groups. Um, if I'm working in the office, there is um, I usually have a list generated that from the night before, that of things that I want to accomplish or people I need to reach out to. So it's an ongoing list, and it's not necessarily rated by most important. In most cases, over the period of time, I've got a pretty good sense of what that looks like. And so I will, I'll just kind of work through that list. And so much of what I do, is dealing with individuals. And so I'm really focused on working with specific individuals. So for instance, yesterday was a great example. I had a couple of calls in the morning, and then I actually went out with one of our sales reps and just worked on his sales approach, how to enter a company, how to talk to customers, how to talk about the network, how to talk about product, and overcome objectives. And so it was literally just a on-site coaching, working directly with the customers and talking through with that rep on what the next steps are. And so then, we go back and, we break it all down. After that, I put together kind of I'll type up an email on kind of what the most important pieces that we talked about today were, and allow that allow that rep to kind of have that to refer back to. So that's typically a day in the life of me. um,
We
it's
only
it's
finished
generally
with the work life. What next? What do you do after work?
typically by the time I get home, it's really a wind down time. One of the things I really like to do the most is when the weather permits. I've got like a little fire pit outside, and I'll sit on my deck and sit next to the fire. And that's really a time when I can clear my mind and just think about issues that I ran into or questions that may have come up, or sometimes that's where the creative aspect comes in, and I'll start thinking about these ideas of maybe something else I want to accomplish. So, um, and it's a brainstorming exercise in some cases. So I'll start making a list and ideas of how this could go, and or things that I want to accomplish after that. So that's just kind of my brain dump and sort of disconnect from life. Um, you know, I've worked really hard over my career to find a work-life balance. It used to be I'd work, 100 hours a week and I wouldn't care. Now it's really important that I separate that time and I have some time with my family. I have some time disconnected from the job itself, because otherwise I just get so wrapped up in the job and the problems that exist in business that I don't take time for myself, which is why I've really made a point in going back to the gym. I don't have make time for my family, so I've really had to separate that. And even though I'm from a when you're in a C-level type of position, you're on call 24/7. But setting those boundaries and understanding what really is an emergency versus what is something else is what's really critical.
In this typical day, do you have time for your family after your fire pit processing of what's happening and like kind of planning session?
Yep, I usually do. It may be kind of around dinner time. So, we'll have dinner and maybe we go get ice cream, or, you know, we'll go, if it's a really nice day, we'll go for a Jeep ride, and we'll just take the Jeep out and take the top off or whatever, and just kind of get out and, explore a little bit, and um, kind of see what else is going on. But we'll crank the music and wind through my hair and all that good stuff. So it's that's generally when I end up really spending some good time with my family. Or um, you know, oftentimes I'll get home a little bit later. So there's, depending on the amount of light and the time of year and stuff, that'll depend on kind of what we do. But oftentimes it's sort of like sit back and relax and just enjoy each other.
Awesome. And how much sleep do you typically get? Because 5:30, it's challenging for most people.
Yep. I tend to go to bed a little earlier than most, probably. So, and as I get older, I'm sure that's going to continue. But I generally get about 6 hours of sleep a night.
That's not too much.
Yeah, well, it's better than 4 hours, right? Um, yeah, no, For the last several years, I haven't been one to really sleep in real late. Even my internal clock just wakes me up even without an alarm. So even if I don't, I'm still awake. I'm still up and moving, and I'll just kind of. I really love mornings. I love sunrises. I love just the calmness of a morning, and so I think that's what really draws me is being able to get up. Oftentimes I'll be, driving to work before a lot of people. And so, the roads are nice and quiet. The air is really calm and cool and crisp. And, there's just something to be really grateful for with how beautiful it can be in the morning and how simple it is. And you really start to take that in and appreciate it. It's a great way to start the day.
I am interested in how do you go about this day from the energy perspective. So what gives you the energy? I hear this interesting vibe that you can kind of take in the natural energy. You can appreciate the morning. You can appreciate the calmness of fire and getting out of digital distractions. Yeah. What it is for you between nature, gym, people, and work.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question because I really do find the value, and I always have, even when I was a little kid. I've always found the value in kind of serenity and calmness and nature. I've always loved being in nature and just being outdoors and enjoying that. And I think that's great for the mind. I think it's great for like anxiety with stress that you're dealing with. I think it's a great way to get out. But I also gain a lot of energy from just working with people and seeing development. So, that's really why I got into my coaching business is I really love seeing people grow and develop and achieve things that they really didn't expect to do, or, their business really starts to take off, or, their eyes just light up because they just realized something that's been blocking them for a period of time. So I gain so much energy from that, and that's really what helps carry me through the day is that that people development. I really love dealing with people and that development. And then if there's opportunities to utilize creativity and problem solve, I'm not always the one that really loves to get into the details of things or push things across the finish line. I know that about myself, but I'm a big thinker. And if there's opportunities to do big thinking, it actually brings a lot of energy to my day, and that'll just kind of carry me on throughout the entire day. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, the six working geniuses. Um, it is
No, I haven't.
you can actually do a test on it, and it's been a really amazing um, an amazing piece of information that I found. But you can do kind of like one of those personality tests, and it helps identify kind of what type of person you are, where you gain your energy from, and where your energy gets drained from. So, like I mentioned, I'm a big thinker, so I gain a lot of my energy from their big thinking aspect, and then I really get drained if I'm having to focus on the little tiny details or being the one that pushes it across the finish line. Um, I'm decent at kind of being a cheerleader for a team, but if I had to do that all day, every day, it would probably drain me. So I can do it in short periods of time and I can gain a lot of energy from that, but I don't generally want to do it all day, every day. Public speaking is an opportunity where I gain a lot of opportunity because I get to talk about, you know, some really impactful topics, whether that's culture or leadership development or entrepreneurism, things that I'm really passionate about. And, though in that working genius process, you start to realize that if you implement, I ended up implementing that with my leadership team. And it was really interesting to see how certain people really would get drained, but other people would gain gain energy from that. And if you can use that on a team setting, all of a sudden you're putting people in place that are always being, you know, energized by certain things, and you're taking people out of things that get drained by that stuff and putting them in the other areas that they can be energized. So you get a much more productive and energetic team over just, you know, sometimes people just get jobs put on them that, you know, they don't like, but they are just taking it on because they were told to. So it's kind of nice to be able to move a team around and help find that opportunity to gain energy from it for each individual person.
Sounds like it's an like advanced resource management. It's not about whether you do have a person playing this role or you don't. It's about like,
Right.
is this person efficient in this position? Do they
Right.
perform to their strengths and the thing that fuels them?
Hmm. Yeah, like
Awesome.
a good example is sometimes like team meetings or all employee meetings. You know, some people, because of their title, may be kind of pushed into running these team meetings, but they don't enjoy it. They don't really get a lot out of it. They may be good at it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they enjoy doing it. Where there's somebody else that really loves putting themselves out there. They have a lot of energy and can really bring a lot of value to those team meetings. So if you put that person in and take the other person out, both people end up being happier and you get a much more effective meeting for everybody else that's attending. And so identifying those perfect situations where you can gain strength and energy and efficiency, I think those are really great opportunities for any company to look at.
Great insight. I have another thing. So with your permission, I would take the position of a professional coach. Well, maybe amateur coach. And my only client is Justin Stinson. I specialize only in you and I can serve only you. So what would you want to improve? The biggest thing.
Boy, that's another great question. Um, I think the thing that I continue to identify as an area that I'd love to improve on, and it's sort of interesting because it's both a strength of mine, but it's also something that I need to pull in even more. So I mentioned that I'm a really big thinker. The problem with that is I'm a much bigger thinker than almost anybody else around me. And so, how do I bring that back down to a smaller level to get to a level where everybody else can fully understand it? And, I will be, you know, 50 steps ahead of everybody else on this big vision. But how do I bring it back down to I'm 10 steps ahead so they can grasp that vision a little bit more? Because we could sometimes when I'm thinking so big, it's way beyond most people's comprehension. And I really have to back it down and keep backing it down until they can fully understand what that means. So if I could get to that point, I think I'd be able to get people on board quicker, get a full grasp of what that vision is and what we're trying to accomplish, um, and then eventually get to that bigger one and just kind of piece it on top of each other. But right now, that's typically one thing is that I can see a lot of it way ahead of time. But how do I back that down and not be such a big, huge thinker?
All right. This sounds like an question of communication and understanding. Let's let's think about why do you want to improve it? What motivates you into that direction?
Yeah. Um, I think um, in order to achieve those really big goals, you have to have everybody on board pulling the same direction and really believing in what the mission is, what that vision is. And if it's so big, then they can't fully understand it. And so then it either sounds crazy. You know, I'll give you an example. So at Liberty, we had an opportunity to essentially expand into 10 additional states outside of Southeast Iowa. And when I initially started looking at it, I did a whole bunch of research. I met with a bunch of people. I met with, partners that would help get us there. A really big thought process to get it going there, and going into really large communities that, the companies never even imagined they would be able to go in there. But when I initially brought it up, it was way too big of a concept. We're going from, you know, going from at that time about a $5 million company to now we're looking at becoming like a 60, 70, $80 million company almost overnight. And that's a really hard concept to get your head wrapped around. So if you can piece it back and, hey, let's look at maybe going into one additional state, then all of a sudden it makes a bigger idea that, hey, we're going to move from 5 million to 11 million, and then 11 million to 20 million. And you kind of break it down into smaller steps. So you get people, um, to buy into it better, and they're more likely to work hard for that vision if they fully understand the reason and what the company is going to gain out of it, what they could gain out of it. And there's a lot of moving pieces with that, because as you're growing as a company, that opens up career opportunities that brings in new staff and new resources that you need. It brings in, new customers that we've never dealt with, and maybe new lines of revenue that we've never thought of. And so understanding that there's a lot of pieces that go along with that and what that could mean. But otherwise, all they're seeing, if all they're seeing is this great big huge goal that's, gigantic out there, it's overwhelming, and they're like, that just sounds like a lot of work and I don't want to do it. And they just don't buy into what the possibilities exist are.
So you find it important because you see that connection between your decision making and the buy-in from the teams in improving the life of everyone, improving the opportunities for those people, for the company, and for you. All right.
Yep.
And you will like the next question. What will you need to sacrifice for that?
It sounds weird, but I would probably have to sacrifice some ego, and some pride, because, as I'm putting this vision together, and, by the time I've got this vision in mind, I've put a lot of time and energy and research and thought into it. I spend a lot of time thinking about it before it even comes out of my brain. And so being able to say, no, uh, this is not productive for the entire staff, for, individuals that are going to be really impacted for it, for myself, I really need to back this off, you know, pulling some ego out. I don't tend to be a very egotistical person either, but I really do love the vision of it, and I love to think big. And in order to pull back on that, I kind of have to set a part of me aside and make sure that it's not about me. It's about the smaller pieces and what is best for the people around me and the company. And we're still going to think big. We're not going to stop thinking growth minded and stop thinking bigger. But if we can pull that back a little bit, I think uh, that's going to take some work on my part, to back off and just set some of it aside. And we'll get to that. Or it'll completely take a different path. And maybe that's not even the right vision once we kind of get going down that road, and understanding that, hey, just because I thought of it and it's what I think is a great idea may not be the right path forward for this organization or the people that are working for me or anything like that. So understanding that, I think, is a really big piece.
That is very deep. And yeah, you're not lying about the big thinking. And this is an impressive level of self-analysis from you, seeing that that your ego is involved, because
You're
this
right. I did like that
complexity
question.
that complexity that
Hmm.
is available for you is at your fingerprints, uh, and not available for the other people,
Right.
tells that, like, yeah, ego is involved. You want other people
Yeah.
to understand the complexity that you have to deal with and how cool you are because you can do it. So
Yeah.
sacrificing
Yeah.
ego and complexity, yeah,
I think some of that
and
comes with asking the right questions of myself.
dropping down, like, to what is important for those guys.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Asking the right questions of myself. I think that's an area I could definitely do better in this realm as well, is as I'm going through this, asking the right questions instead of asking, okay, so I've thought of this. Now what's the next step in making it bigger? And then what's the next step in making it bigger? And I need to probably go back and say, okay, how's this going to impact my people? Um, what are the consequences if we do this? What I kind of look at the flip side of the coin. What could happen if it all goes wrong? Understanding that, you put kind of a plan in place in case worst case scenario happens. I don't ever intend on that happening, but life is life, and another pandemic could hit and all of a sudden you're, stuck in, a pretty difficult situation. So I don't think anybody can ever, anticipate another pandemic hitting and businesses shutting down, the whole world going crazy with it. But, I think, understanding that there could be challenges that are faced that maybe I'm just not thinking. I'm thinking, you know, kind of an upward trend. How do I turn sideways and kind of level things out and make sure that we're protected if something does go wrong in order for us to get to that next step?
Justin, my final coaching question would have been about this, about what will you do to achieve the thing that you want to improve. But you kind of caught up to the question and started right in, but
Yep.
everything you say is internal. So
Hmm.
I will change my question. How would the external thing change? How will you position yourself differently towards your teams? How would you present your ideas differently towards them? So external stuff, how that would change.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think a lot of it has to come with just the communication style, um, how you're going to communicate this, and being able to back off that vision by a lot. Um, and then maybe just, um, I think the like a visual aspect of how you're going to um, project, that big vision or the pieces of the vision. So, maybe there's visuals that come along with it that really help explain what the plan is and, you know, how everybody's pieces fit together. Right now, I stand in front of a group and I talk about this great big idea and, how great it's going to be and where the company can end up. But I don't necessarily use visuals to portray that. I don't necessarily proactively ask those questions of the team or show them that I'm thinking in a smaller piece. I think that's an area that, from a communication standpoint, that I could put in front of them and allow them to see kind of that process of how I'm getting to where I'm getting and what that might look like for them and for their coworkers, and what piece I'm going to play in helping support them get to that point. And I don't feel like I'm probably that great at giving that sort of information.
Hmm. How would you connect it to your insight about sacrificing some of your ego? Because this is this scenario where your ego is the biggest and the strongest, where you are showing what is it that you're brainstorming, thinking,
Yeah.
what is getting into life, and you are standing in front of the crowd that probably adores you. Yeah.
Hmm.
How do you work with the source at this moment where the ego is the strongest? How do you lower it?
Yeah. That is such a fine line to walk because you really have to truly believe in what your vision is. If people see that, maybe this is just another crazy idea that Justin's having, or, well, here's another weird one, they're not going to see that there's true belief and understanding and excitement behind it. So there has to be visibility with that team to be able to fully um, feel that energy and that buy-in from myself. And so that's that fine line is, yes, I have to give up some ego, but if I give up too much ego, does it seem like I'm not, I don't really believe in this vision? I maybe thought of something that, I want to grow the company like this way, but, I don't necessarily believe it. Maybe there's a better way. Hey, I'll throw it out. Do you guys have a better idea? If I'm coming to them with a vision, I really have to show that I'm fully invested and fully excited about this vision. So that's the fine line I have to walk is, yes, I'm giving up this ego, but man, I still believe in this vision. So how do we get there? Um, and maybe it's, um, I talked, I did a, public speaking event at one point, and I talked about being transparent as a leader and kind of opening yourself up and letting people see kind of behind that professional view. Let them see the real you and, show some emotions and let them see that real side of you as a leader. And I think that's where I could probably open up a little bit more. Coming from larger companies, I always remained very, very reserved and I kept my walls up and I didn't get too close to anybody. And, I was, and I was young in my career. So, I was the manager and that's my title. And, I'm going to lead you is kind of how I thought. But as I've kind of progressed through my career, I've started to pull back some of those and people could see a lot more of me. And then they can start to understand who is Justin, why is he thinking like this? And, understanding that, he's not just trying to direct us to do certain things. He really has our best interest in mind. And he really wants to create the best opportunity for the company that he's trying to grow. And, but they're only going to understand that if they see the real Justin and they really see the transparent side. So I think that's still an area I can grow in is allowing more transparency and allowing them to get a full, better understanding of who I am and why I'm even thinking this way.
Justin, I can only compliment your work. Thank you so much. I think this is just pure skill. Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
I think it's a great showcase how your skills in coaching transfer into actual power of real change that you can execute in your life. This is huge. I am very thankful to you for this conversation.
Thank you.
Great
Yep.
time.
I've really enjoyed it.
Alrighty. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. We'll see you.